All right, now that we know what data is and what our types of data that we can collect are, we need to talk about how we collect that data. So generally speaking, we take a sample. We don't get data from every single person we're interested in. So here's our first big thing that's going to be on an exam. Well, I guess second, because quantitative versus categorical is one. But it's these four definitions here that are demonstrated in this cute little graphic. So our population is who we want to know about, right? So we want to know about our population, but a lot of times it's untenable to go out and get information from our population. So like just assume our population is Mesa students. There are about 25,000 students enrolled at Mesa. So to go out and get information from all 25,000 of them would take a very long time and a lot of money. And if you were a student, right? If we were a student trying to collect that information, we probably wouldn't have access to most of those students, especially ones who are taking classes online only. Even me as a faculty member, if I wanted to talk and figure out something about Mesa students, I only have access to the students that are in my own class or the ones that I can go outside and talk to. I can't talk to everyone. So one thing we can do is we can go ahead and take a sample. So we'll just go ahead and talk to 100 Mesa students and figure out what's going on with them. So population, who we want to know about, sample, who we actually get information from. Now, a lot of time, our whole purpose of taking a sample or looking at a population is to figure out some value, some measurement, whether it's the percent of people who are, opposed to a particular measure on the ballot, or whether it's the average, height of our basketball players, whatever it might be, right? We're looking for some value. And what we calculate is either called a parameter or a statistic, depending on where it came from. So a measurement from an entire population is called a parameter. So you can imagine a lot of descriptive statistics, you're going to be given a parameter. When I give you the average exam score on an exam in our class, I'm giving you a parameter because I have the entire population that I'm interested in. I know everyone's exam scores. Now, if I don't know that and I'm using a sample, I have information from a sample, then I'm going to be getting what's called a statistic. This is our lowercase s that we talked about on the first page. So you have your example here. I will point out that a lot of the times this will remain unknown, our parameter. Unless you have this information, you have access to the entire population, it's most of the time something you can't actually obtain. The best we can do is a statistic and sort of using statistical measures and inference to say, well, the population value is probably close to this. So that's parameter, statistic, population, and sample. The nice thing for students is that they do start with the same letters. So in terms of population and sample of words that we've used in regular language before, and they keep pretty similar definitions in statistics. And then parameter and statistic, while they may be new, as long as we know that they're the measurements and they come from the P, population parameter, S, sample statistic, will be good on the test. So we got an example here that I'll give you a moment, or I will say, highly suggest that you pause the video and try on your own. So if you're coming back after pausing, we have this political scientist who's interested in college students as a population. We know this because it says that in the first line. It says she wants to know how college students feel about Social Security. So we know what her population is. And then we look and we know the samples who she actually got information from. So we can look down at the end and it says she has 104 questionnaires, right? That's her actual information. So we have 104, and the questionnaires themselves are not our sample. We need to figure out who filled out those questionnaires. That's 104. It looks like students selected at random from the undergrads at her college. So this is definitely something I could ask on a test to identify a population sample. And the piece that I really care the most about, if this was a test question, would be part C. What are some of the reasons this sample is not representative of the actual population she's interested in? Well, hopefully you've written some of these down, but I'm going to go through what I get from students a lot. her college only. To me, this is one of the biggest problems. If you think about even just the colleges here in San Diego, UCSD, USD, SDSU, 3 colleges in the same city, they all have very different student demographics. For those of you thinking of transferring, I'm sure one of those campuses is not on your list for some reason, right? So SDSU, UCSD, USD are all super different, and they're all in San Diego. You can imagine that if her college is in Texas, or her college is in Tennessee, or her college is in New York, those are all going to be very different students. And so this is not going to give her a very good measure of all college students. A lot of students then mention the idea that this is undergrads only. Tend to be younger than the graduate students. But when I first read this question, it didn't even occur to me that college students would include undergrad and graduate. It wasn't until students brought it up that I even thought of this. But again, we're leaving out all graduate students. That's a problem. A lot of students think this is a pretty small sample. It is, but the biggest problem is not that. It's really that this is just already this sample is not representative, right? Even if you had 104 students that were selected differently, we'd be a little bit better off, but we'd still be pretty small. And then the last one, which a lot of students notice as well, is that these are people who returned the surveys. And people who return surveys are very different than people who don't return surveys, especially because a lot of time people who return surveys are, sorry, I was looking at YouTube comments and got totally distracted. I see you. The people who return surveys are the people who have strong opinions. So that's usually a problem here, is that somebody's going to be like, ooh, I really want to make sure that they know my opinion about Social Security, so they're filling out their survey. And somebody who has more of a neutral opinion or doesn't know what the heck's going on with Social Security yet is probably not sending that survey back. So we're undercounting people who are more neutral and overcounting those people with strong opinions with a voluntary response sample.